F1 or J1, which one is better and what's the difference? That's what I want to talk about today, because I know a lot of you have been asking me, Sheila, I want to apply to study abroad, especially in the US. Which visa should I apply for and what's the difference and which one is better? So having had both J1 and F1 visa, I want to share the differences, and it is you to decide which one is better. Okay. Let me start by saying a lot of international students in the US they always apply with F1 visa. Most students have F1 visa. This is because a lot of students sponsor their studies by themselves, and therefore they're given F1 visa. If you have a spouse or a child, like I came in with my daughter, she got F2 visa. So F2, I'm going to explain all that. But if your studies, coming to study abroad, is being sponsored by the US government, either through Fulbright or any government exchange program or any scholarship that's above 51% in terms of directly from the government, you're going to apply for a J1 visa. Okay, so that's basically the difference. If you're sponsoring, you're self-sponsored, or you have school scholarship and you're also adding in your own personal fund, most likely that will be an F1 visa. You'll most likely come in as an international student with an F1 visa, and your spouse, that's your husband or your wife, and your children will come in with an F2 visa. And you're allowed to come with your family. You're allowed to come with your children. You're allowed to come with your husband, okay, as a student. Same to J1. J1, if you come in and it's government sponsored and all that, you'll come in with J1 visa, and your children, your spouse and all that will come in as J2. So what's the difference? As an F1 student, I have both. I started with a J1. I was a J1 visitor through Mandela Washington Fellowship, and then I came in as an international student, and I was on F1. Remember, I was on full scholarship. Actually, if you're meeting me for the very first time, my name is Sheila Vandegraaff. I just finished my second master's here in the US. I was studying international development. I was on full scholarship, but remember, I was on F1 visa. Okay, I'm still on F1 visa. So that allows me to come in with my daughter. So what's the difference? What's this F1, J1? You've seen the definition of both, but how does it play along here in the US? When you come in as an F1 with an F1 visa, so it's almost like you're going to pay for your studies by yourself or the scholarship. The J1, the first difference is the J1 will be sponsored by the government, like almost entirely everything is sponsored by most of the things are sponsored by the government through Fulbright and all that. Number two, that J1, the difference between F1, so I'm going to start with F1 and J1. So F1, J1. F1 students, when they come in with their spouses or their children are allowed to study in the US. They can go in and continue, like my daughter enrolled in school. I'm not paying any school fees. I'm not paying any uniform. I'm not paying any food, whatever. Everything is taken care of. They can go in and study. Now, the spouses for the F1 are not allowed to study. They can only do recreational studies, like learning language, learning English, recreational learning. If that person wants to do a study in the field, they have to change their status to F1. Okay? Now for J1, if they want to study, if your spouse or the children, your dependents want to study and you're a J1, they are allowed to study. They are even allowed to, now remember F2, those who are the spouses, the dependents, are not allowed to work. And they can only study, that's the spouse. The children can do their studies until they, but the spouses are not allowed to work. Now for J2, the spouses are allowed to work, they just have to apply for the authorization to work, and they can also enroll for studies. So that's the major difference in terms of studies and work. The other difference with J1, F1, so I'm starting with F1. F1 and F2 is that the F2 holder doesn't have a 2-year home residency. What does this mean? It means that if you're on F2, you can continue after finishing your OPT, the optional practical whatever training. After finishing your studies, you are allowed to work for 1 year if you're not in a STEM field. If you're in a STEM field, you are allowed to work 3 years and continue to work and even continue to your green card and all that. If you are a J1 visa holder, you have a 2-year. You have to go back to your country and work in your country for 2 years before you can come back and settle in the US and continue their work. And so they have that, it's in their visa. So they have a 2-year residency. A must, you can't bypass it. Whether you come in and marry an American and you become an American citizen, you have to go there. I know there are people who tried to, there are some people who I think have tried to maneuver and all that, but it's always like a must. You have to go back to your country for 2 years and come back after 2 years. Those for J1 and J2. Another difference, F1, you're not allowed, it's not a must that you have health insurance on you throughout your stay in the US. But for J1, it's a must that and they have their particular insurance and all that. F1, you can maneuver, if the school is too expensive, you can maneuver and get another one. But I always recommend, it's good that you have health insurance. I don't even want to talk about it right now because healthcare here is very, very expensive, extremely expensive. So I wouldn't even put it there. Just have health insurance at all the time. So we're getting the differences. So another difference for F1 and J1, F1, you are allowed to work. Remember, when you're done with your studies, you're allowed to work at least 1 year once you're done. Then for those who are not in the STEM field, and then remember I graduated this year June, right? So I have the whole of this year until next year June to work full-time employment as any other citizen in my field, and the right amount, the amount that they're paying other citizens and all that for 1 year. Once that 1 year is done, you're supposed to go back to your country. That's for F1 non-STEM. If you're in the STEM field, you're allowed to work for 3 years, with OPT. If you're on J visa, you get done like this, you have to go back to your country, or maybe you're given some grace period and all that, but you always have to go back to your country. And if you want to extend, you have to have a special request for your extension. Lastly, for F1, you have a grace period of 60 days. Once your program is done, maybe your program is done June, your end of time here is, because I got a 5-year visa, but then you remember my master's was like 2 years. I have 1 year to do my to work here. Then once that is done, even if you have 5 years, your stay here in the US has come to an end, so you're given a grace period of 60 days. So when these 60 days are done, you have to leave the country. If at all you didn't get an offer letter. But remember, you can get an offer to work. Your organization can sponsor you. You can get married. So there's a way you can always transition to other type of visas or other type of staying here. For J1 holder, once you're done with your program, you only have a grace period of 30 days, and some are even shorter for you to leave the country. So those are the basic differences. I hope I made sense. Those who are asking which one should I go for, how should I go for it, that's the difference. Thank you guys. Please remember to subscribe. We hit 8,000. Please remember to subscribe so that you can reach as many people. Tell me where you're watching me from. Tell me if you're applying and whether you're planning to come through J1 or F1 visa. And if you have any issue, we are helping students across the world to come and study abroad. So thank you guys, much love.